If your small business is booming, you might say,
cha-ching!
But you should say,
like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
And we'll help your growing business. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
At Lowe's, loyalty is royalty. With Christmas right around the corner, treat yourself for less during the holiday season. Rewards members get early online-only access to Black Friday doorbuster deals on Thanksgiving Day, like the Hisense side-by-side fridge, just $799. Not a member? Join for free today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid 11/27 only on Lowe's.com. Member-only doorbusters and midnight Eastern. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. See Lowe's.com/terms for details. Subject to change.
A warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by a good friend of ours, Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports. We did talk to him about how good of a start Gonzaga got off to the season. Now, I did that before Michigan just completely and utterly dump trucked Gonzaga. So you want to have a little bit of context there. There it is, but we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be taking a look at just some of the teams that have been standing out to him thus far this season. We're going to talk about the Battle for Atlantis tournament because we've got a lot of those games coming up for Thursday, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Lars CM, they meet us on Matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. Everything is powered by Better. That is BETR on Better. They're making things all the better for you because they make it easier than ever before to be able to dive in on daily fantasy. All you do is go to BETR.app and then you type in the promo code VSINPOD. That is VSINPOD. That gets you $10 free to be able to get started. You're just taking a look at guys and you pick over or under on their specific stat line and you're all good to go. And we're all good to go to take a look at what we saw from a very wild day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Now, you do have to upload this by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, so some of those uber late games are still hanging in the balance, but how about if we do start with the aforementioned Gonzaga Bulldogs getting just absolutely crushed by Michigan, 101-61. This was just a romping. Gonzaga goes 3 of 22 from three-point range. They lose a rebound battle, 44-38. For Michigan, Yaxel Lindenberg, 20 points, 11 rebounds. I would say his best game as a Michigan Wolverine. Ade Mara was able to chip in there, 13 points, only had 4 rebounds, but I mean, you didn't need too much of them because you had off the bench a guy in Trey McKinney be able to step up. He supplied the team with 17 points. Just a complete and utter tail whipping in this game. Even though Michigan lost the battle in terms of turnovers, 14-11, you still had Elliot Kadu throw in their 13 assists. Very, very impressive, to say the least, what we saw out of Michigan. Very impressive what we saw out of Iowa State. Syracuse entered the day one of the top teams in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This was a 1-point game at the half, and Iowa State in the second half pulled away. They won that second half 60-30. They win overall 95-64 for Syracuse. J.J. Starlin comes in. He gives the team 10 points. Again, I think it might be a little bit of addition by subtraction whenever you have him out because the defense goes down a little bit as Milan Mimosilovic, 6 of 10 from three-point range, 24 points. The team was playing once again in this game without Damon Lipsby. No problem. Nate Izey, he didn't give the team really any scoring whatsoever, but chipped in their 5 boards, played some rock-solid defense for Iowa State. They did a nice job in terms of winning that turnover battle 19-9. They win the rebound battle 32-31, so a very dominant performance as they go as a team, 9 of 20 from three-point range. Kansas gets the job done over Tennessee, this by a count of 81-76. The Kansas offense, which has been pretty dormant without our good friend Mr. Peterson, great name, well, it came alive here as they went down low. Flory Badunga, 13 points, 7 boards. Melvin Council did a little bit of everything. 17 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists for Kansas. They do lose the turnover battle by a count of 9-7, but they get to the line. They go 26 of 30 at the free throw line. Nate Ament was able to give the team 20 points, 9 rebounds, but really everyone else no-showed in this one. Jacoby Gillespie, he had 11 points, but he took 19 field goal attempts to get there. That's not very efficient, and that was a little bit rough. No roughness for Louisville, a non-tournament game. 104-47. They completely romped the New Jersey Institute of Technology. For Louisville, they go 20 of 48 from three-point range. Ryan Conwell, 8 of 15 from 3 for 32 points. Isaac McNeely, 17 points, 5 of 10 from distance. Javon Hadley, he dialed it up twice from distance. Adrian Woolley off the bench, 5 of 6 from the floor for 15 points. Louisville wins the rebound battle, by the way, 59-21. So that was a very dominant performance right there. And Houston, after they had a little bit of a rough go of it against Tennessee, they looked a little bit more dominant on this day as well. 66-56 final, unable to cover that number, but a much better performance here. They were up 14 points at the half, and Emmanuel Sharp was sharp, 4-11 from 3, 17 points. Houston only goes 8 of 27 from 3, but Notre Dame, 6 of 28 from the outside. Houston is able to win that rebound battle, 44-34. They completely controlled the tempo in this game. For Houston, only 5 turnovers. They're forcing a couple fewer turnovers themselves, but very nice performance there out of Houston. The defense was able to look much, much better on this day, and a team has been looking pretty rock solid here to begin the season. How about Texas? They lose that game against Duke to begin the season. Ever since then, they've been able to get things back online. 102-97 the final, as the Maui Rims very kind in this one. NC State, 9 of 19 from 3. Texas, 16 out of 32 from the outside, as Jordan Pope was able to supply 28 points. You had Chandler Weaver supply 17 points for this Texas team. They won the rebound battle 31-28, as NC State did have Kadir Copeland fill it up, 6 assists, 4 boards, 28 points. Van Allen Lubin was able to give you 23 points, but just 5 points out of Trey Elliman. Darian Williams, 10 points as well, so you needed a little bit more there, and you were able to get more out of the Vanderbilt offense, but it was not easy against Western Kentucky. 83-78 the final, as for Vanderbilt, 9 of 24 from the outside. Considering they're playing this game at Battle for Atlantis, that's actually quite impressive, but they actually lost the rebound battle 42-37. For Western Kentucky, they hold in there with Tegan Moore, giving you more, 11 of 11 at the charity stripe. 5 turnovers, but also 5 assists, 7 rebounds, 24 points. Cam Afner, he supplied the team with 18 points, and Armello Boone off the bench, he gave you the boon. He was able to give you 16 points, 7 rebounds, and Bryant Selbongwe was able to chip in their 9 rebounds. So a relatively quality cover there for Kentucky, also a relatively quality cover. 104-54 all over Tennessee Tech in this one. As for Tennessee Tech, they allow Kentucky to go 15 of 30 from three-point range. Ortega Owe, Denzel Aberdeen, they're able to supply 16 points apiece. Still a few ailments for Kentucky, but no issues in this one. As for Kentucky, they did a nice job winning the rebound battle 48-27. They win the turnover battle 11-10. This was just flat-out domination right there. And for Texas Tech, they were able to avoid being embarrassed by New Orleans, because a few teams have been embarrassed by New Orleans. Texas Tech was in a little bit of a tight game in the first half, 51-34 at the half, but they allowed New Orleans to score just 16 points in the second half, 82-50 the final. That's that good Grant McCaslin defense. And for Texas Tech, they go 11 of 24 from 3. Christian Anderson, main headline guy, he was able to go 6 of 9 from 3. Very nice, 23 points. JT Toppin, 16 rebounds, 19 points for Texas Tech. They win that rebound battle 47-30, so they were just able to go out there, completely dominate that one. And then in other games that we saw, how about UC San Diego off to a 7-0 start? They take it to a Towson team that is a legit good defense, 87-73, 16 of 25 from 3 for UC San Diego. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be sustainable, but boy, oh boy, were these guys firing all cylinders. Hole was greater than some of its parts here, as you had essentially 7 different guys give you at least 8 points. And for Tyler Teata, he did his best for Towson. He was able to give the team 27 points, but UC San Diego, they were able to dial it up. They got themselves a really nice win. Also being able to get a nice win, Belmont all over Toledo in this one, 87-72 the final for Belmont. They've had a little bit more touch and go with their three-point shooting to start the year. They were firing all cylinders here. Tyler Lundblade, 6 of 12 from 3. He had 22 points. Belmont as a whole, they go 15 of 30 from three-point range. They did have 20 turnovers in this game, so that was a little bit unsightly, but for Toledo, they also got just completely dump trucked on the glass. Belmont wins that rebound battle by a count of 39-21, so nice dominant display there. Memphis, as a favorite of 10-plus points, just the fourth time in the last 27 occasions that they covered the number, 74-58. They hold down Southern Illinois, who's just had some bad shooting to start the year. They go 2 of 15 from 3, 20 of 33 at the free throw line. Memphis, they actually lose the turnover battle 15-13, and for Southern Illinois, they played even up on the glass, but they could not hit a shot to save their life, and for teach me how to Dougie McDaniel, he was able to give the team 15 points, 5 assists. So Memphis, they do find a way to persevere. If you like me at Manhattan, man, they were up 19 points against Wagner, and they lose in overtime 103-101. And when's the last time you've seen a Wagner score over 100 points in a game? But they go 9 of 16 from three-point range. The Manhattan Jaspers, in a overtime game with 3.5 seconds remaining with the game tied, fouled about 80 feet away from the basket. So that's how that one went. So there are some interesting ones. And Army, they finally get a win, 81-73. They take down Fairleigh Dickinson. Might be a fairly long season for them. Also, this was not great for Delaware State. They lose to non-Division I Virginia State. You get some really good HBCU action, and Virginia State is legitimately one of the better Division II teams out there. But for Delaware State, that's not necessarily a great look. This is a good look for USC, though. 88-75. They take it to the Arizona State Sun Devils. As for Arizona State, they go 8 of 25 from three-point range. Mo Odom continues to be rock solid, 17 points, 4 assists, but Chad Baker-Mazaro has been in college basketball for pretty much as long as I've been out of college. That would be 9 years. 23 points in this one, and for USC, they win the rebound battle 32-21, so we saw some good action out there in Maui. I don't know how the Chaminade versus Boise State game went as I do this podcast, but certainly, we've also been seeing some great action in the battle for Atlantis, with St. Mary's being able to get the job done over Wichita State, 70-65. St. Mary's just 2 of 16 from three-point range, but as per usual, they win the battle on the glass, 38-36. Rock solid effort from Wichita State, though. Will Berg, the Berg, only 3 points but 9 rebounds. Keenan Giles, T.J. Williams, both had 15 points apiece for Wichita State. They did lose the turnover battle, 13-9. That turned out to be very costly, as Paulius Marsukis, 20 points, 9 rebounds, and Andrew McKeever, down low, 15 rebounds for St. Mary's, so they do find a way to be able to persevere, get the job done. Right now, a candidate for most underachieving team of the year would be Loyola Chicago. 63-51, they lose to San Jose State, and Loyola Chicago actually had a lead at the half, and for Loyola Chicago, they go actually 7 of 18 from three-point range, but 21 turnovers. They lose the turnover battle 21-7 against San Jose State, who really doesn't cause a lot of turnovers. It's not good right now for a team that should be trying to honor Sister Jean this year, and, well, it's been very dishonorable. And something else that's been dishonorable, watching Gardner-Webb basketball, they got blown out once again, 84-51. Navy with an easy win and cover on that one. You saw some competitive action between Tulsa and Northern Iowa. Tulsa just barely squeaks this one out, 63-60. The final, as for Northern Iowa, only 7-24 from 3. Tulsa, they go 9-28 from 3, and for Tulsa, 14 out of 15 at the charity stripe. Jalen Lull, along with Miles Rigsby, both had double figures off the bench. They are able to persevere, and they do find a way to be able to get the job done in that one. And also being able to get the job done, you saw a nice performance from Virginia Tech, though Colorado State, they do get the cover in this game, 66-64. The final, as for both of these teams, a little bit cold from 3, and for Colorado State, 4 of 19 from the outside, but Kerry Booth still supplied the team with 15 points. And for Colorado State, they win the rebound battle 35-28. As for the Hokies, it was all about Jalen Bedford in this one. He was able to give the team 17 points. Nicolas Avadeus, he's been very versatile for the team, but only 13 points, 2 assists by his account, a pedestrian effort. But Tyler Johnson, he was able to supply the team with 12 rebounds. So nice quality win for Virginia Tech, but a quality cover for Colorado State as well. And then this was bad for Cincinnati. They were a 22 or so point favorite, and they lost outright to Eastern Michigan, 64-56 final. For Cincinnati, they've been trying to speed up their tempo, and it's leading to bad shots. They go 7-29 from three-point range. Eastern Michigan actually turns the ball over 17 times in this game, but they did a nice job winning the rebound battle, 36-29. And for Cincinnati, it's not looking like it's going to be an amazing season for them, and this was also not amazing if you're a fan of this team, as Grand Canyon just could get nothing going whatsoever against Iowa. 59-46 the final, as this was a little bit of a slog, but Isia Howard, he was able to come in off the bench. He supplied the team with 19 points, so Iowa, they just continue to find ways to get the job done. The Fighting Ben McCollums, now 7-0. That was a nice quality cover for them as well. And then this was relatively quality, as well as you were able to get a very rock-solid performance out of Seton Hall. I do think that Shaheen Holloway is doing an amazing job with his team, 75-61, all over Washington State, as Washington State, they lose the turnover battle 15-14, and they just couldn't find a shot from 3. 5 of 24 from the outside. Ace Glass, great name, 15 points. We'll talk a little bit more about him with our good friend Curtis Rogers in a few minutes, but AJ Stanton McCray, he was able to supply the team with 20 points. Seton Hall not attempting a lot of threes, only 4 of 11 from three-point range, but they win the turnover battle, they win the rebound battle 28-26, so they do find a way to persevere, get the job done. The rest of the game's just a little bit too late to be able to fit on this podcast, but that said, if you're taking a look at trend-wise where we're getting in college basketball right now, this is with still a few games pending for Wednesday. I think that we've got like 4 or 5 that are hanging out there in the balance, but we have seen the overs and the unders be relatively even Steven, as now the unders are starting to take a little bit of a lead, 546 unders to 532 overs, so about 50.5% of games are going under the total, and favorites on the money line hitting at 50.6%, 546, 532, and I believe 12 pushes in terms of against the spread, and we did see the favorites very much reign supreme on Wednesday, 34-23 against the spread, and the unders, they went about 65.5%, 36 unders, 19 overs with a few games still pending. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Curtis Rogers? He does such an amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports, and he's joining me next right here on Cuscus with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
If your small business has a problem, you could say,
Ugh, just my luck.
but you should say,
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
and we'll help get you back in business. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Are you looking to get an inside edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word, .com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cuscus Soups with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Curtis Rogers aboard. He does a tremendous job over at 710 Seattle Sports. Take a look at a wide variety of things. He's doing a tremendous job. Take a look at this great game of college basketball. He's dialed in with regards to what we're seeing with the Seattle Seahawks and their tremendous year. He's taking a look at what we're getting in the offseason in baseball, as well as those winter meetings. Those are always hot and heavy, so he does it all, and he does so also well. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at a kid from Kent. And Curtis, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, always happy to be on with you, and it's Feast Week. It's one of my favorite weeks on the college basketball calendar. Love seeing games being played in ballrooms. I love them seeing played in tiny gyms, and it's big programs in these odd spaces. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And also, the Players Era tournament, that's rolling on heavy as always. So there's just so much great college basketball action right now. And that is one of my parts of Thanksgiving week. I know it's obviously one of your favorite parts.
Absolutely, though the least favorite part of Feast Week was the fact that for that Players Era tournament, we didn't even get a bracket. It was like watching on election night.
No.
Oh, and selection for the fifth place game is going to be Rutgers. It's like, wait, what the heck are we doing here? So they need to clean that up a little bit. But that said, lots of high quality games out there. And we are doing this ahead of the Michigan versus Gonzaga game. We don't know the final of that, but just what have you made out of, for one, both of these teams, and more specifically, your neck of the woods, Gonzaga, because I felt like we talked about in the offseason that it felt like this team was flying a little bit under the radar, and boy, oh boy, have they looked impressive thus far this season.
Yeah, I remember those conversations vividly, Greg, and Gonzaga once again is kind of taking everybody, I don't know by surprise so much, but definitely exceeding expectations early on in this season. I think a win over Michigan would send a big message that, oh, by the way, Gonzaga is still very much here to play. That blowout win over Creighton, that was impressive. Beating Alabama the way they did, blowing out Maryland. I mean, this Gonzaga team, Greg, is one that I think is one that I would not be caught dead overlooking if I'm any team coming up on their schedule. I know they've got a big game coming up against Kentucky on December 5th, also against UCLA up here in Seattle. So that's going to be a very pro-Gonzaga crowd, as most of their alumni base is on the western portion of the state. So, yeah, this Gonzaga team, I mean, they've got such a veteran front court. Graham Ike, I mean, he is definitely in the running for an All-American spot this year. He has been so good to start this season. Almost a guaranteed 20 and 10 from him. And then, obviously what Ty Grant Foster has been able to do. But let's not overlook Mario St. Superi from Spain, one of the best names in college basketball, has really been a great floor general for this Gonzaga team, averaging almost 10 and 5, real stat sheet stuffer. I really like what I'm seeing from him, and getting that kind of play out of your backcourt, especially from a freshman. I mean, Mark Fee's got to be jumping for joy right now, and this Gonzaga team is moving along like a well-oiled machine.
Oh, they certainly are. It has been impressive what we've seen out of Gonzaga thus far this season. And when it comes to hierarchy of college basketball, do you think that they should be there with the likes of Purdue? I recognize that they lost, but Houston, because I do feel like perhaps they should be right there. And I think the biggest reason why is that 9 out of the last 10 NCAA tournaments, they've made it to the Sweet 16. And in college basketball, because I do a lot of things with regards to taking a look at just the futures market, and when it comes to that, the biggest thing that you always want is a team that consistently gets to the second week, because if you have early exits, that's just not necessarily a great sign. And Gonzaga, even though they fell a little bit short last year, it just feels like time and time again, they're just there towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I think we're well past the time of them being overlooked in college basketball. I think they are one of the top 10 programs in college basketball currently going. People will always point to the no national championships, and it is just so hard to win a national championship. Everybody looked at Duke last year and their roster with Cooper Flagg and Con Kneppel. Kneppel's tearing up in the NBA right now. Cooper Flagg's had some pretty flashy moments as well. People just looked at that talent and said, oh, well, they're destined to win the national championship. That national championship game last year. But still, you've got such great programs. It just kind of shows the randomness of the NCAA tournament. They made it to 2 national championship games in the last, decade. It's not like they have been lacking in tournament success. You mentioned just how often they get to the second weekend in the big dance. That stands for something. That means a lot, because there are a lot of programs that are just happy to get there, that are just happy to hear their name announced on Selection Sunday. I think Gonzaga is well past that point. Even though they are not in, a power conference right now, next year it will certainly be a step up in competition for them as they join the Pac-12. It's again with, some pretty heavy hitters out west. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare in that. I still expect them to be the favorites in that conference going forward. But to continue to be surprised by Gonzaga's success in 2025, that's on you, because that's just not something that I think a lot of diehard college basketball fans are surprised with anymore. I think that's a program definitely worth considering year in and year out.
Yes, absolutely. And they have been able to do an amazing job here this season. And we are doing this out of that Michigan game, but 2 of the best teams in all of college basketball, in my opinion, squaring off in lovely Las Vegas. That's Curtis Rogers, who does an amazing job over at 710 Seattle Sports. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and no doubt about the action in lovely Las Vegas has been great. Probably going to be a little bit more lackluster on Thursday, but how do you take a look at what we're getting out there in the Bahamas in the battle for Atlantis? Because I know that you and I both love ourselves some Mountain West basketball. We're actually doing this as the Colorado State versus Virginia Tech game is going on, and I feel like that's just a very under-the-radar tournament with some sneaky good teams like a Virginia Tech, like a Vanderbilt, that hopefully a lot of people are going to get a chance to see, because I think that this is a very high-quality field, even though you might not have quite the firepower that you saw in Las Vegas.
Looking at this bracket, it is going to be one that you look at just all these teams in the battle for Atlantis. It's such a weird tournament, because so often you see teams that are just, rolling right along, and they head to such a, funky venue. It's a ballroom, it's got low ceilings and whatnot. And for whatever reason, you see some weird basketball come out of the Bahamas. But I love it. I love just these kinds of fields. I love what VCU was able to do against USF. I mean, they have been a really fun team here. I just really think these kinds of tournaments, the Battle for Atlantis as well as the Maui Invitational, they just need to get the juice going again, and you'll see really fun basketball to be played. But I think this tournament field is pretty evenly matched. I mean, it doesn't come with a lot of star power in terms of programs, but I have really enjoyed what I've seen out of Atlanta so far over the first couple of days of the tournament. And then it's shaping up to be a pretty good one here. Nearing the end of things, obviously Vanderbilt getting that win over Western Kentucky, VCU over South Florida. Virginia Tech, Colorado State, those are teams that always seem to be like in the first four for whatever reason. It kind of feels like a first four preview. But I really like St. Mary's and Wichita State. It's a fun group of teams in this tournament that whoever it is that you're rooting for, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for nearly every team to come away with a victory.
Absolutely. And I do think that those are teams that we need to take a look at in terms of the national landscape. And those are teams I feel like are being slept upon a little bit. And are there a few other teams that are standing out to you that perhaps are being slept upon a little bit? They could be teams that are playing on Thursday or Friday. They could be teams that are off. But I do think that the Battle for Atlantis is going to be featuring a lot of them. We've talked a lot on this podcast about Gonzaga, obviously. So that's a team that is very much checked off. But are there just a few teams in general that you look at and you think, man, maybe they deserve a little bit more fanfare?
Yeah, I mean, heck, Tennessee coming up with the victory over Houston. I thought that was a pretty impressive victory for them, 76-73. Yes, the tournament style is maybe a little less indicative of what a regular season game is going to be like. But, I mean, if you look at what Houston did last year in games that they lost to only the best teams in the country. It was not teams that were the best. Obviously, like Tennessee being led by Nate Ament, I mean, talented freshman, no doubt, 6'10", averaging about 18 and 8. Didn't have a great game against Houston, but not going to hold that against the kid, especially when he was still able to contribute with the rebounds, with the assists. Went 1 of 8 from the field, but I mean, who has a good day offensively against that Houston defense? They are always just swarming. So I think Tennessee right now, Greg, Rick Barnes, great coach. I think the Volunteers are a team that are trending upward for sure, especially getting off to this undefeated start. I think they're going to be a team definitely worth watching. And then obviously they've got a big game up against Kansas, Syracuse, Illinois, Louisville. That's a pretty heavy next 4 games for them. So we'll get a good idea as to how good this Volunteers team is over the next couple of weeks. But so far, so good, and passing an early test with that win over Houston.
Yes, absolutely. And with this Tennessee team, I do think that they have a chance to be able to make some noise out there in the SEC, because I'm not sure how you take a look at this SEC, but it doesn't feel like it's as, shall we say, strong at the top, but it feels like it's very evenly dispersed, because with Florida, it feels like they've taken half a step back from a season ago. Auburn is still solid, but when you lose your coach of Bruce Pearl, you have the step down to Stephen Pearl, and we saw what happened to them against Michigan. They're not quite that same team either. Alabama's rock solid, but as we know, they've already lost to Purdue. But I just take a look at these teams like a Vanderbilt. I take a look at a team like a Tennessee, who you just mentioned. You can just go down the list of these teams in the SEC, and it just feels like maybe aside from South Carolina, there's no real easy teams in the SEC, but at the same time, there isn't necessarily that one like surefire Final Four team either, which I think is going to make that conference a whole lot of fun.
At this point last year, we're starting to see glimpses of how good the SEC was going to be, where you had multiple teams in the top 10. You had multiple teams in the top 5 really throughout the course of all of last season. That hasn't been the case so far this season. Alabama, the highest ranked team, but they've already got 2 losses. And then they also have a game coming up against number 2 Arizona. It's going to be a pretty hotly contested game. I believe it's played on a neutral site, so there's a little bit of reason for optimism for the Crimson Tide in that game. But right now, the SEC, to me, I don't see a title favorite, like any team that's head and shoulders above the rest, and one that I think could be cutting down the nets come the end of the season. You mentioned Florida. Their preseason ranking to me definitely felt like, hey, they're the reigning national champions. They do bring in Xavier Lee from Princeton. They do bring in Boogie Flan. Those are 2 talented guards, but Lee especially has not lived up to the billing. I think he's only shooting something like 22% right now from the field. So that has been a tough sight to see for Gators fans right now. But yeah, looking up and down this SEC right now, Greg, there are a lot of good. Like you said, there's a lot of good. Remains to be seen if there's a lot of great like there was last year. Last year, the SEC tournament kind of was, the Elite Eight. It was the Final Four. I definitely, not to say that, there's just been a mass exodus of talent and whatnot, but it's hard to do that year in and year out and be as competitive as they were a year ago. Right now, if I'm looking at, who is the most competitive conference in college basketball, I think right now I'd have to give it to the Big 12.
Yep, with the Big 12, I do feel like they've got more star power there. I think that the disbursement of talent might be a little bit wider in the SEC. If you're comparing like the bottom 3 or 4 teams of the SEC, I think that they're stronger than those of the Big 12, but I do think that the Big 12's top 3 to 4 teams might be better than those of the SEC as well. So that makes things interesting, and a conference that now we both have a part of because Washington's a part of the Big 10. I'm from the great state of Wisconsin. What have you made out of some of these Big 10 teams thus far? Because we both had high expectations for the West Coast teams. We're going to be seeing Oregon in action on Thursday, and they've been a disappointment for me. I've been wanting to see a little bit more from UCLA. USC just went out there and they won the Maui Invitational after that triple overtime game against Troy, which is one of the most wackadoo games I think I've ever seen in my life. But it feels like they've been a little bit underwhelming, and the Big Ten just feels like it's a little bit of a mixed bag with some nice surprises like a Northwestern, who we're going to be seeing on Thursday, but also some disappointments lumped in there as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that crazy USC-Troy game. The battle of the Trojans, Troy Trojans,
Yes.
USC Trojans. I think USC got some good news this week in that Elijah Arenas appears to be making his way back from that torn meniscus. He's a 5-star recruit, son of Gilbert Arenas. He was one of the most sought-after recruits in the country, and that's going to be a huge piece to USC, and obviously they've got talent already there. Chad Baker-Mazzara, who's on his 12th year of eligibility. He's 45 years old. Credit to him for sticking it out in college still. But yeah, I look at this Big Ten right now. Purdue definitely, being the number 1 team in the country. There is some debate as to whether or not, have Arizona's wins been more impressive than what Purdue's total talent is right now. You could definitely make the case there, but I think Purdue is still a very worthy team at number 1. I thought Illinois has looked really good at times this season too. And how about Michigan and Michigan State? That's gearing up to be a really special rivalry this season, especially with the start of the year that both those teams have gotten off to. Really excited for that. And then Indiana back in the top 25 as well. Darian DeVries, Tucker DeVries, those two guys are really playing ball. And how about Nebraska ball? How about the Cornhuskers sitting at 7-0? Will that stay? Will they be at the top of the Big Ten come, the start of conference play? Probably not. But hey, let's get the Cornhuskers their first NCAA tournament win ever. How about that? That's something that I'd like to see here. And you mentioned Washington. They've been dealing with a couple of injuries. Hannes Steinbach, their best player, he's been out for a while now. No real word right now on when he will return. They got a test at home against Southern, had to go to double overtime in their last game. They were able to stave them off. Won at 99-93. Victor Yates going 23 points. Frank Kepning, another guy who has been in college basketball for about 7 years. He had 12 boards that night. So tough test, especially coming off of a big win in the Basketball Apple Cup against the Washington State Cougars. But they've got Nevada coming up this week. And then also you've got 2 Big Ten Conference games to start December, UCLA, USC. Those games are going to be played out west. So should be an interesting battle for those 2 teams. And then obviously the battle for Seattle. Washington against Seattle U. And how about the Seattle U Redhawks beating Stanford in Palo Alto there about a week or so ago, thanks to former Gonzaga player Jun Seok Yu. He was really good in that one. So just got to give a shout out to the Redhawks as well, playing some good basketball away from Seattle.
Oh, no doubt about it. With the Seattle Redhawks, I think that they can make a little bit of noise out there in the WCC. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what St. Mary's is going to be able to do on Thursday, as they're going to be doing battle out there in the battle for Atlantis. As I'm doing this podcast, I do not know who they're going to be playing, but we know that they are going to be in action. And Curtis, it is the best time of year because we've got all day and all night basketball. We've got Turkey coming up on Thursday and so much more. And I know you're doing a great job of covering a little bit of everything out there in the Pacific Northwest. So love to get people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, we've got all sorts of coverage on seattlesports.com, our YouTube page. That's where you can go to download and watch all sorts of videos from our shows. Tune in to all sorts of games. Washington State, they play. But big shout out to Ace Glass, one of my favorite names in college basketball, putting up a 40 spot the other night. I think some chip repair company should get in touch with him because that's a perfect name for that kind of place. So shout out to him, shout out to the Cougs. But yeah, a lot of great stuff, seattlesports.com. A kid from Ken on Twitter and Instagram. And Greg, always happy to hop on with you. talk some college hoops with you, especially during Feast Week. It's a great time and always look forward to it, and I look forward to our next conversation.
No doubt. Curtis is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this great game of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So a big thanks to Curtis for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday, this Thanksgiving Thursday, as we hit some big shots.
Everybody knows Shaq, but off camera, he's just a regular guy.
People never believe me when I say I'm just like them. I take out the trash, do dishes, and I struggle with moderate obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA. And a lot of adults with obesity also struggle with moderate to severe OSA. You know those scary breathing interruptions during sleep, the loud snoring, choking, and daytime fatigue? I knew I had to talk to my doctor. Don't sleep on the symptoms. Learn more at don'tsleeponosa.com.
This information is provided by Lilly, a medicine company.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always a pleasure to be joined by our friend Curtis Rogers. He does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at a little bit of everything out there in the Pacific Northwest. Does an absolutely amazing job taking a look at this great game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. So big thanks to Curtis for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday, this Thanksgiving Thursday, as we touch them all.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is pretty much in order of tip time with regards to a lot of these events, so some of it goes a little bit out of order. We do not have any extra games today as well, so that'll keep things a little bit nice, clean, and easy. And how about if we do get started with this first game of 8:09, 8:10? It is East Carolina, and they're going to be playing against St. Bonaventure. This is from Fort Myers, Florida. And the Bonnies are a 9 to a 9.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 145 to 145.5. And with East Carolina, I set them as a 12.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay with St. Bonaventure. Just another year where East Carolina has no control over the perimeter whatsoever. Both their 3-point shooting percentage is awful. They're currently well outside the top 3 with that regard, shooting less than 26% from 3. And last year, they were a bottom 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And they're getting cooked once again from 3-point range. They're allowing teams to shoot 42.5% from 3. Should see a little bit of regression there, and they're facing off against the St. Bonaventure team that's outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. So I do like the under. I somebody told 142.5, but St. Bonaventure should be able to just eat this defense up. You've got a Bonnie's team that has been in the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Daryl Simmons has done a nice job providing the team with 17 plus points per contest. St. Bonaventure should be able to hold up down low against the likes of Jordan Riley, who's back from a season ago. He's able to give that team 6 to 7 rebounds per game, but Frank Mitchell 2 years ago over at Canisius was averaging a double-double. He's given the team 16 points, 9 boards. Caden Charles has been able to do a nice job, give this team right around about 13 points, while Amari Marshall, he's come over from Albany. He's been able to give this team a nice little bit of a boost as well. And for East Carolina, just again, you don't have much perimeter play, and that has really caused this team to just be in exile with regards to their perimeter defense and offense, and they're turning the ball over 15 times per game. Right now, they've been looking to the combination of Corey Culker along with Isaiah Mbeg to really help lead the offense. Mbeg, he comes on over from William & Mary, and he's only been able to shoot about 28.5% from 3-point range. Culker has been able to give you about 9 points per game, but I mean, this is his first year at the D1 ranks, so he's very new. Giovanni Amaruju's rock solid down low, 9.5 rebounds per game, but I mean, even what is supposed to be the forte of East Carolina on the glass, they have been a top 125 team with regards to rebound percentage, but that's still leaving something to be desired as they're outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. So you've got a lot of things going wrong. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slow down game. This is an early tip time on Thanksgiving, and Bonnie's play super duper slow. You've got an East Carolina team. We're around about 100th in terms of total possessions per game, so made a total of 142.5. Like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 12 here with St. Bonaventure. 8-11, 8-12 on the card. Michigan State and North Carolina, they do battle from Florida, with North Carolina a 2 to a 2.5 point underdog. Totals between 150.5 to 151.5. That's on a total here of a 149. I'm going to be in on the under. North Carolina looks much better on defense than they have been in the past. Currently, the backcourt is leaving a little bit of something to be desired as they're dealing with that injury to Seth Trimble, so that's going to be hurting them quite a bit. They do face off against a Michigan State team that is quite slow and controlled as well. Michigan State outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. North Carolina's looking to play fast, but it's not necessarily warp speed. 78th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for North Carolina, 34% three-point shooting, neither here nor there. Caleb Olson and Henry Vassar have done a really good job of providing versatility. Vassar comes over from Arizona, 16 points, 8.5 boards, shooting over 40% from three. Wilson's not attempting a lot of threes, but he's hit 2 of like the 5 that he's attempted, 20 points, 10 boards, steal and a half, block and a half per contest. Nice stat sheet suffer, but Kion Evans, who was solid last year over at Colorado State, he's being thrusted into a big role in terms of facilitating the offense. There's a lot more on his plate with the injury to Trimble, so Luka Brogdon, he's had to really step in, give this team like 12 points per game, could use a little bit more of the likes of Jaron Stevenson and Jonathan Boom Boom Powell. And then on the flip side for Michigan State, this is a unit that was able to shoot it well from three-point against East Carolina, but I mean, East Carolina's rough. This is a Michigan State team that overall, they're shooting about 32.5% from three. I think that that's about where they're going to be. Trey Ford, he comes over from Samford. He should be able to shoot better than 27.5% from three, but you've got really good rebounding. Top 10 team with regards to rebound percentage. And then Jeremy Fears, 10 assists, 10 points per game. He has been tremendous. Jackson Kaler is right now shooting over 45% from three, 15 points, 9.5 boards. Stat sheet suffer there. And then Colin Carr, a steal, a block, 11 points per game. I mean, you don't necessarily have that headline score outside of Kaler, but got a lot of guys like a Kurt Hang that just all know their role. And I do believe that that's going to be enough for Michigan State to get the job done. And do think that Michigan State plays sturdy defense. Semi-line at 3. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2.5 with Michigan State. Set a total of a 149. So like the under, 813, 814 on the card. This is Arkansas and Duke. They're doing battle from United Center. This is a CBS special, and you've got Duke currently a 10.5 point favorite. 156 to 157.5 is the total, and I did set my line at 10.5, so 10 or less willing to lay with Duke, 11 or more taking the points with Arkansas. We're going to see how this moves overnight, but that said, I'm going to be in on this under. I did set my total at a 154.5. Fully recognize that this is a Duke group that has been just so efficient on offense. Last year, number 1 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're right back there in the top 5 this season, but this is never really a team that's going to be running it and gunning it. They're relatively mid-tempo this season, but a little bit of that is actually because they've been playing against some pretty fast teams, so I actually do expect this to go downward a little bit. And lost on a lot of people is that last year Duke was a top 6 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are right back there this season. And on the other end, you do have a squad that has been just very shaky with regards to the defense. The offense for Arkansas very much is there. You've got a lot of guys in the backcourt that are just firing on all cylinders. You have to love the fact that you've got a guy in year number 3 of this system of John Calipari and DJ Wagner, who's able to give you 4 assists, about 10 points per contest. Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff, the 2 freshmen, they have really been the main men, and they have been absolutely tremendous. They've been both able to give you 16 plus points per contest, both are giving you a little bit over 4 assists per game, and then you do have nice versatility of Trayvon Brazile coming in, giving this team a little bit of 3-point shooting at 6'9", though the 3-point shooting has been off this year. 13.7 boards per contest. You've had Carter Knox be able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, and Malik Ewan, he hasn't necessarily contributed a ton for this team, but he does give you a little bit of size off the bench, so I don't think that Arkansas is going to get completely blown away, but the Boozer brothers are just such game changers, as Cameron Boozer has been the main attraction, giving you over 20 points. He's been able to give you a darn near double-double, as he's averaging 9.9 rebounds per contest, 4 assists, one of the most versatile players in all of college basketball. Not quite Cooper Flagg, but he's not doing a bad job of following him up. Patrick Ngagba down low has been able to give you about 6.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest, and this is a Duke team that they're not going to go out there and generate like 100 billion turnovers or anything like that, but they just play such good defense with all that size around the perimeter. Teams can never really get off good 3-point shots right now. Opponents are shooting only 24.9% from 3-point against them. That should be going northward a little bit, but Caleb Foster, Isaiah Evans in the backcourt have been solid. Foster, not give you a ton of scoring at 8.5 points per game, but good defense, 2.5 assists per game. Evans, last year shot over 40% from 3, down to about 35.5% this season, but reason to believe that should be picking up. Dame Sarr, they picked him up late in the offseason as well. He's come over from overseas, and he's been able to shoot 40% from 3. Just weapons upon weapons with bringing in guys like Darren Harris and Malik Brown off the bench as well. So I did set Duke as a 10.5 point favorite, 10 or less willing to lay with them at a 11 plus. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Arkansas, and then do think that the Duke defense holds up here. Set my total at a 154.5. I'm going to be in on that under. 815, 816 on the card. Also from the United Center, Northwestern and Oklahoma State. Too bad Oklahoma State, a 2.5 point underdog. Throughout this game, it is 160 to 160.5. This is going to be out there in the backyard of Northwestern. Northwestern, and I did as a result make them a 5-point favorite. Could have a nice tempo war here. You've got a Northwestern team about 298th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Oklahoma State is right now in the top 10 in terms of total possessions per game, and contrary to popular belief, if you look at the overall scoring of these two teams, Oklahoma State is the more efficient defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Northwestern's a more efficient team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, despite Oklahoma State scoring more points per game. But for Oklahoma State, they do now have Anthony Roy back, who he was averaging like 25 points per game in the small sample size they had over at UW Green Bay last season, and that helps out a bunch. That has been dealing with a few injuries. You've had Isaiah Coleman miss a game or two. Jalen Curry has been a little bit in and out of the lineup as well, so that gives them another piece, and you should have Curry back in the fold in this game as well after he missed a few games. And Victorious Miller, he's really been the do-it-all guy for this team. 2.5 assists, 17.5 points. He's shooting 50% from three for an Oklahoma State team that's shooting about 34% from the outside. And what's really going to be big for Oklahoma State here is their perimeter defense, as they face a Northwestern team that's shooting about 42% from three. Northwestern always good at being able to develop solid three-point shots and always good at taking care of the ball, as Northwestern, right now, they're a top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and that is a little bit of the undoing of Oklahoma State. Outside the top 225 in terms of ball security, Northwestern a little bit more pedestrian in generating turnovers this year. They're hovering right around about 150th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but I do think that they're actually going to do a solid job down low against an Oklahoma State team that, they've been a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage, but it's not like they're super duper physically imposing. And for Northwestern, they've been able to get a nice breath of fresh air down low out of Arrington Page. He's come in, giving the team 15.5 points, 7 boards, a guy that's bounced around quite a bit. Nick Martinelli at 6'7" just does a bit of everything. 19 points, 6 boards, and from 3-point range right now, shooting 75% from 3. That'll be going downward, but that said, Jaden Reed, nice transfer from South Florida. He's been able to give the team over 40% 3-point shooting, 13.5 points per game. And then you've had some of the ancillary pieces be able to step up. Someone like a Trey Singleton, give you 8 points, 4.5 boards. Angelo Caravino has been able to give you 5.5 points, 4 boards himself. So I do like the way that these guys are stepping up for Northwestern. And I do think that Northwestern, with their overall ball security and the way that Oklahoma State gets a little bit sloppy with it, that allows them to be able to dictate the tenor of this game. Semi-total 155. I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Northwestern. Made them a 5-point favorite. 8-17, 8-18 on the card. It is Richmond and Furman, and they are doing battle from old State Farm Fieldhouse out there in lovely Orlando. You've got Furman, a 4.5-point underdog. The last game is 148.5, and with Richmond, I did set them as a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Furman. With Furman, it's been a really disappointing start to the season for them. They did lose their top scorer in PJ Harris from a season ago, so the backcourt is in a little bit of flux, but you did maintain a lot of the versatility from a season ago. You bring back someone like Cooper Bowser, who he at 6'11", has been able to give the team 11.6 boards per contest, and Charles Johnson last year shot in the high 30s from 3, 12 points, 11 rebounds per game. He's actually shooting about 30% from 3, so he's been able to do his part, but you just need someone in the backcourt to be able to step up. Alex Wilkins has been able to supply 16 points. He's been able to register about 4 assists per game, and he's done so as a true freshman, but these guys like an Eddie Bronson, Ben Vanderwall, that have been in the program for a while, not giving you too much. Tom House has regressed. He's only giving you about 3.5 points per game, but with this Furman team, they always do a good job with their 2-point shooting percentage, and right now they have been a top 40 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, shooting 63.5% of the free throw line, and it's not necessarily great, to say the least, but that should be going northward. And on the other side of things, you've got a Richmond team that they have been much better with regards to their offense, and they're kicking up the tempo a little bit more. They're now more of a mid-tempo team. After last year, they were about 300th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You're bringing Will Johnson, guy that has been around the block. He was over at Loyola Marymount, UT Rio Grande Valley. At both of those places, he was registering about 3 assists per game. Hasn't given too much facilitation quite yet, but I do think that that's going to be picking up a little bit. You bring in AJ Lopez, who was pretty rock solid over at Maine last season. He gave that team about 14.5 points. Threw in there about a 40% 3-point shooting percentage. That gives Richmond a little bit more from the outside. Now, Richmond just not a great team in terms of being able to hit the offensive glass year in and year out. They've been a little bit better this season. You've had Jonathan Beagle be able to, at 6'9", 6'10", give you 9 points, 6 rebounds per game, and then Michael Walls has been able to give you 8 rebounds. He's actually giving you more rebounds than points, but I do think that Furman going to be able to hold up down low. I think that Furman gets a lot of good looks from 2, and for Furman, over the last few seasons, this has been a team that has been looking to play a little bit more slow, a little bit more controlled. This is not a team that's going to be playing at some sort of breakneck pace at their core. I believe that Richmond is going to be a little bit more slow and controlled as well, and as a matter of fact, for Furman, 322nd in terms of total possessions per game, so set a total here of a 144.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm going to take 3+ here with Furman. 8-19, 8-20 on the card. It is Charlotte, and they're playing against Illinois State, also from the great state of Florida, and Illinois State does find themselves as a favorite of 5 to 5.5 points. 139.5 is the total, and I said a total of 137.5. I do like the under for Charlotte. They are back outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, and Illinois State was a really efficient offense a season ago. Not a team that's really looking to play fast, though. About 194th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. That's actually up quite a bit from a season ago, but for Charlotte, this has been a team that's really struggled from the perimeter over the last few seasons. Do think that there's reason to believe that they're going to be a little bit better this year with bringing in Zane Mingo. He was over at Marshall a season ago. He's been able to supply about 12 points, 4.5 assists per game, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. And then Major Freeman, he has been a major upgrade for the team. He's been able to supply about 10 points, shooting in the high 40s from three-point range. I don't think that that's sustainable. He comes over from Siena, where he was shooting about 30% from three. He gave that team 13 points, about 4 boards per contest, and Charlotte, just like last season, they have been a squad that has not really generated a lot of turnovers outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Illinois State, not necessarily a team that's going to be really pressing that as well, but I do think that Illinois State going to be able to do a solid job down low because you bring back Chase Walker from a season ago, 6 boards, 7 points per game, but all of a sudden Charlotte has been a top 125 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, and this is an Illinois State team that, going back to last year, they were outside the top 300 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound. Now, that said, they were also good on the defensive glass as well, not allowing their opponents to grab second and third chances. Brandon Lieb has been able to take some strides forward as a 7-footer, 5.8 points, but even more rebounds and points at 6.3. You've got Landon Wolf also giving you more rebounds and points, and it's been a Illinois State team that has only shot about 35.5% from three. Expect that to be a little bit higher. Johnny Kinzinger and Terry Coleman have been able to combine for about 27.5 points per game between the two of them, shooting about 40% from three-point range, but in the end, I do think that Illinois State should be able to get the job done, but currently they are dead last in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Doing a great job, though, of being able to guard the arc. Think that this is going to be a nice, slow, controlled game. Set my line at a 3.5, so taking 4+0 Charlotte, and I'm in on the underside by total 137.5. Now we go to the battle for Atlantis. Unfortunately, these games are off the board because these teams played yesterday, 8:21, 8:22 on the card. It is Vanderbilt facing off against VCU, and with regards to my handicap, I did set Vanderbilt as a favorite of 7.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7 with them, 8 or more, take the points with VCU, and then set a total of a 161.5. 161 or less, I'm going to be in on the over. 162 or higher, the under. These are two teams that are very much looking to play up-tempo. Now, I have shaded this down because the just shooting backdrop in general here for the battle for Atlantis is terrible. Typically, I'd be setting a total more in the high 160s, but you do have two teams that they do take quite a few jump shots. You've got a Vanderbilt team that entered into this event shooting well over 40% from three-point range, actually closer to 39% from three, but still doing a really good job knocking down their shots. VCU, more of a 35.5% three-point shooting team, and you just can't rely upon those jump shots. That said, this is a Vanderbilt team that is playing at warp speed. They're a top 40 team in terms of total possessions per game. VCU, up-tempo, but I'm more around about 75th in the country, but you do have a Vanderbilt team that has been a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis. Their defense has actually been solid. They had a little bit of tough time on the glass against Western Kentucky, but still, you've had the Duke Miles do a really good job being able to supply this team with 16-plus points per contest. Devin McLaughlin, one of the main holdovers from a season ago. He was their top rebounder last year. He's still giving you about 7 boards per game, and then just have a lot of depth. Frankie Collins doesn't give you a lot of scoring, but yesterday, 9 assists. He's one of the top players in terms of generating steals in college basketball. A.K. Okereke is very rock solid coming over from Cornell, so he's used to that up-tempo style. And for VCU, they bring in Phil Martelli Jr., and you did have someone in Barry Evans follow him with the system. He's a 6'6" guy that just really does a little bit of everything for the team, but I mean, it's very much whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I mean, Evans is one of, I believe now, 7 guys that are giving at least 7.5 points per game. They utilize a lot of depth. They do need quite a few bodies to be able to play the system that they do, but you've got a 6'10", nice stretch player in Laser Djokovic, who's been able to shoot in the high 30s from 3, 10.5 points per game. Jadarian Tracy, who comes over from Oregon, 3 assists, 13 points per game. It has been a squad that has been turning the ball over a little bit too much, 13 turnovers per game, and that's a big reason why I did set Vanderbilt as a little bit more of a sizable favorite. I do feel like this is a little bit of a bad matchup for VCU, especially a VCU team that they don't necessarily have a ton of size. The way that you want to take down this Vanderbilt team is by being able to take it to them on the glass like Western Kentucky was. I just don't know if this team is going to do so, even with having the versatility of the freshman and Nick Lewis and being able to get what you've been able to out of so many of these guys that give you like 4 or so rebounds per game. So circumstance for 7 or less, want to lay it with Vanderbilt, 8 or more taking the points with VCU. VCU, and then 161 or less in on the over, 162 or higher the under, 823, 824 on the card. It's Virginia Tech. They're facing off against St. Mary's. I said St. Mary's is a 3.5 point favorite. Willing to lay up to 3 with them. 4 more taking the points with Virginia Tech. Set a total here of a 140.5, so 140 or less in on the over, 141 or higher the under. This is the St. Mary's team that's still playing slow. They're outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, and you do have a Virginia Tech team that's going to be looking to gun it. They are a top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game, but we did see Virginia Tech get slowed down by a similar team in Colorado State in terms of the way that they want to play tempo-wise. Now, St. Mary's, they've got the just size advantage here. Andrew McKeever yesterday, he was able to give that team 15 rebounds. You've got a guy in here, he Wessels, who's 7 feet tall, Polias Marsoukas, he gives you 15 plus points, 9 plus rebounds per game. I absolutely love what he's able to bring to the table, and it's going to be a little bit difficult for this Virginia Tech team to be able to match up with. And for Virginia Tech, they really do need to get Toby Lawal online. He's been shooting less than 25% from 3, but you've got Nicolas Avadeas, who just does a little bit of everything. He was a little bit pedestrian on Tuesday, but that said, he's been able to give the team more around about 14 points per contest, and it was actually Wednesday where he was pedestrian, but he's been able to do a nice job in terms of just being able to supply the team with a little bit of facilitation. Amani Hansberry, he's not necessarily an offensive dominator, but that said, he's been able to give the team right around about 8 or so rebounds per game. It's not necessarily the deepest bench, but Jaden Schuett, Ben Hammond, they've been able to come in. They've been able to give you some production, but I do think that on the flip side, Mikey Lewis might be one of the best shooters in all of college basketball, shooting well over 45% from 3-point range, 16 plus points per contest. Gets a little bit more neutralized by the fact that you've got this battle for Atlantis backdrop that just really favors nobody. But that said, do think that St. Mary's should be the favorite. I think that they win from within 1 to lay up to 3 with St. Mary's. 4 more taking the points with Virginia Tech, 140 or less, and on the over, 141 or higher the under. 825, 826 on the card. South Florida is going to be playing against Western Kentucky. I said South Florida is a 4.5 point favorite. Going to be willing to lay up to 4 with them. 5 or more taking those points with Western Kentucky, and I did set a high total here of a 166.5, 166 or less in on the over, 167 or higher the under. You do have a South Florida team that's currently a top 10 team in terms of total possessions per game. This team is absolutely looking to gun. Now, they were limited to 66 points in the game against VCU. They went 2 of 14 from 3 points, but this is not a team that necessarily is like completely reliant upon the 3 ball. You do have Joseph Pignon. He's been able to give you 15 plus points. He had a rough go of it in the game that we saw on Wednesday, but Josh Omajafo has been really good coming over from Robert Morris. 17 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists. Isaiah Nelson has done a great job on the glass, being able to give you about 9 or so rebounds per game, but we saw Western Kentucky on Wednesday be able to really take it to Vanderbilt on the glass. This is a team that has a lot of versatility with that regard. It's a team that underranked below them last year. They were a top 10 team in terms of total possessions per game, but it's all about taking more. He's been able to give you more. 18 plus points, 6 boards, a steal and a half per contest, and for Western Kentucky, they're doing a supreme job of taking care of the ball. So even though they might not be quite as up-tempo as South Florida, they're only turning the ball over about 9 times per game. Now, this has been a team that has been shooting less than 30% from 3, but Western Kentucky is not necessarily a team that's going to attempt a billion threes or anything like that. You've got Brian Sarabungwe, who down low at 6'8", he was a 9+ rebound guy over at Tulsa a few seasons ago. He should be able to hold up there. You've gotten absolutely nothing out of Blaze Keita, by the way, but I mean, some good depth. Cam Hafner, he comes over, if I'm not mistaken, last season was over at Evansville, and he was a double-figure scorer for them. He had a nice game on Wednesday as well. So I do think that the depth of Western Kentucky allows them to be able to hold in there, because this is a South Florida team that's going to be looking to tire out. And I do still think that you get some good scoring in this game, because these two teams aren't necessarily overly reliant on the 3 ball. So 4 or less, 1 to lay is South Florida. 5 or more take the points with Western Kentucky. 166 or less, and on the over, 167 or higher the under. 827, 828 on the card. Wichita State and Colorado State to battle from the Battle for Atlantis. I said Wichita State as a 2-point dog. Willing to lay up to 1.5 with Colorado State. 2.5 or more. Take those points with Wichita State, and then set a total of a 144. So 143.5 or less, and on the over, 144.5 or higher the under. Colorado State, to the surprise of many people, actually outside the top 310 in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Wichita State team that is not looking to gun it either. They're about 270th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but these have been 2 top 50 offenses in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And for Wichita State, you've got the Willow Berg. He's standing 7'2", comes in for Purdue. He's been able to give you some plus boards per contest. TJ Williams has been able to do a nice job along Keenan Giles of helping out with the offense. Williams has been able to give you about 10 points. She's in the mid-30s from 3. And Keenan Giles entered in this event shooting 58% from 3. That'll be going downward because the battle for Atlantis just really dwarfs offense, but he's been able to do a great job with that regard. And Wichita State, top 25 team in terms of not turning it over, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and that is why I still did set a total total above a 140 because you do have two teams that are very efficient. They don't necessarily hurt themselves. Colorado State more around about 10.5 turnovers per game. And for Colorado State, they are the top team in all of college basketball in terms of free throw shooting percentage. They've been draining over 40% of their threes. Again, might be going a little bit downward, but Kyle Jorgensen, Josh Passarelli entered in this event combined for about 32 points per game, both shooting over 40% from three. As a matter of fact, each of your top 5 scorers for Colorado State entered in this event shooting at least 40% from three. Again, we should see that tick downward a little bit, but Kerry Booth is able to do a nice job dominating down low. He's been able to give the team 9 boards per contest, as it's a Colorado State team that has also been a top 75 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. They have been allowing some points. They're outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So Colorado State, who entered in this event number 2 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they've got the advantage on offense. Wichita State has a little bit of an edge on defense. I do think that in the end, Colorado State is able to be just a little bit more efficient. You've got a trio of guys in Brandon Rechsteiner, Jevin Mooney, Jorgensen, who I mentioned before. I'll give you at least 2.5 assists per game. Josh Passarelli, he's not too far off there. So I do think that just all the different options and looks allows Colorado State to be able to get the job done in a nip and tuck spot, and I do think that you're going to be close enough for late game felling. 143.5 or less, and on the over 144.5 or higher, the under with Colorado State willing to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 for more, taking those points with Wichita State. 829, 830 on the betting board from out here in lovely Las Vegas. You've got Oregon and Creighton doing battle, and with Oregon, they're a 1.5 point favorite total on this game between 154.5 to a 155, and I set a total of 147.5. I do like the under. Neither of these teams are necessarily gunning it, and they're both outside the top 150 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. For Oregon, it's really been all about the turnovers. They're outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and that's a big reason why I did set Creighton as the 1.5 point favorite. I do like them outright on the money line. I think the Creighton is going to be able to do a rock solid job down low on Creighton, by the way, now 255th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Oregon is hovering more around about 206th, and for Creighton, you do bring in Owen Freeman. He was very good over at Iowa last season. Did have a little bit of season-ending injury, so I have to wonder if he's been playing less than 100% thus far. 9 points, 5.5 boards. And then for Creighton, it's just the fact that they don't have that main guy like they've had in the past. Josh Dix, Blake Harper, these two guys, between the two of them, are averaging about 22.5 points per contest. But for Creighton, you didn't expect the three-point shooting to necessarily be amazing, but you expected a little bit better than 30.2% from the outside. To their credit, they're not putting teams on the free throw line. They're a top 6 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed per field goal attempt by their opponents. So that's going to hurt a Oregon team that has really been relying upon free throws to actually get their scoring going. As Jackson Shellsett only missed 1 game with that injury, he's been able to get the team 17 points, 5 assists, but he's really been the main offense aside from TK Simpkins, who comes over from Elon, 13.5 points, 40% three-point shooter. Nate Biddle's giving you versatility, 16 points, 8 boards, 2 blocks, but he's been a little bit bigger on the defensive side of things rather than the offensive side of things, and there just hasn't been a ton coming in off the bench. You need a little bit more out of Wee Lin, Sean Stewart, guys like this. They just have not necessarily materialized for this team. And for Creighton, I do think that the fact that they are going deeper into the bench than they did the last few seasons, it used to be a very, very thin rotation for Creighton. That's actually going to bode very well for them. This has been an Oregon team that has been a little bit of a sieve down low as well, outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that this is going to be a game where you're going to get it relatively mid-tempo. It's the old Dana Altman war between Creighton, where he used to coach, and Oregon, so this will be a lot of fun. But it's that Creighton as that 1.5 point favorite. I like Creighton on the money line, and I'm in on the underside. I total 147.5, 831, 832 on the card. It is Rutgers and UNLV doing battle from lovely Las Vegas. UNLV a 2.5 to a 3-point favorite. 154.5 to a 155.5 is the total, and I do like this under. I did set my total here at a 150, as for UNLV, they are looking to play at warp speed. They're a top 40 team in terms of total possessions per game. Rutgers is 310th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for UNLV, still deal with the injuries of Miles Shea and Emmanuel Stevens, so that really hurts them. And for UNLV, you do have to wonder how functional this up-tempo style is, because they're looking to gun it with so much of their roster currently being hurt. The offense has been fine. They've been a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, he's been able to give you 16 points per contest, and then we got Howie Fleming, who he's been all around in terms of college basketball, but he's supplying 10 points, 6.5 boards, 3 assists. But for that said, for this UNLV team, they're right now shooting 28.5% from 3-point range. They've been leaving a lot to be desired with that regard. They're very much looking to pound the ball down low with someone like Kamani Hamilton, who's been able to give you 5 boards, 13.5 points per game. But I do think that Rutgers is going to be able to hold up at the point of attack, and even though it's out here in lovely Las Vegas, I actually did set Rutgers as a 2-point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. You've been able to get Emmanuel Ogbole down low to give you 6.5 rebounds per game. Dylan Grant has good versatility with 15.5 points, 6.5 boards. So these guys have been rock solid. And Grant is right now shooting 58% from three. We'll see a little bit of a fall off there. But Rutgers is also not putting teams on the free throw line. They've been a top 30 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed per possession. It's a Rutgers team that they themselves are in the top 170 in terms of rebound percentage. And this Rutgers team, they typically do a nice job in terms of folding up down low. They've been a top 50 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. That's really been the lifeblood of UNLV. Now for Rutgers, they're also allowing teams to shoot 38% from three. Should see that normalize a little bit. Backcourt has been a little bit, shall you say, in transition after you lose Harper along with Ace Bailey from a season ago, but you bring in Tyreek Francis, who is solid over at NJIT, 13 points, 3 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from three. Michael Davis, again, 52% three-point shooting. That should be going downward, but 10 points, 2.5 assists. I do think that Rutgers finds a way to slow this thing down a little bit more and finds a way to be able to get the job done. I did set Rutgers as a favorite of 2 points, so like them on the money line, and I'm going to be in on this total under as well. Apparently, they thought that there was going to be a lot more games for the players there, as we've got a few skips going down to now 841, 842 on the card. This is Colorado, and they're going to be taking on San Francisco. This is from Acusure Arena, and right now San Francisco, they're a 1-1.5 point favorite. 155.5 to 156 is the total, and I did set the Dons as a 2.5 point favorite. I do like them in this spot. They're playing out there in their home state, albeit not in the city of San Francisco, but still that's going to be able to help them out a little bit, as I just really like the way that San Francisco always goes out there and plays good sound defense. They're consistently in the top 50 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Currently shooting 41.2% from three. Do think that goes downward a little bit, as Mookie Cook, who was a former top 50 recruit, just couldn't get out there on the floor for Oregon last season. So right now shooting 59% from three. That'll go downward a little bit, but 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, steal and a half, block per contest. Just a nice stat sheet stuff for David Fuchs, who was a good rebounder over at Rhode Island last season. He's been able to help out down low, give you about 6.5 boards per game. Ryan Beasley had a really nice run towards the end of the 2024-25 season. He's now been their main scorer, 16 points, 3 assists per game. San Francisco always seems to be a little bit sloppy with the ball, 13.5 turnovers per game. That's a bit of an issue, but for Colorado, the backcourt play has been leaving a little bit of something to be desired. You've got some good versatility with having someone in 6'9" Sebastian Rencic be able to come in, give you 14 points, shooting 37% from three, and then you do have Elijah Malone, who's still able to pop it from three. It's been a little bit more of an ancillary guy, putting in their 8.5 points per game. Did like the pickup of Barrington Hargress, a 20-point per game scorer over at UC Riverside last season. He's been more of a primary facilitator, 5.6 assists to just 1 turnover per game. He's been able to give you 12 points per contest, and this is a Colorado team that's currently shooting 42% from three-point range, but they really haven't left Boulder yet, so that's something that you need to take note of. This has been a bunch that has been very much reliant upon getting to the free throw line as well. A top 20 team in terms of free throw attempts per possession. It's a San Francisco team that they're not fouling a ton. It's not like they're a top 10 team with regards to not fouling or anything like that, but doing a solid job there. And this has been a Colorado unit that they themselves have been doing a pretty solid job in terms of being able to hit the boards. They're not allowing a lot of second chances. They're a top 50 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. So do think that you get a lot of one and done possessions here. It's a San Francisco team that's not going to be super duper slow, but at the same time, they're not like looking to push tempo or anything like that. 287th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Colorado's right now checking in 100. So set my total more around 152.5. I'm going to be in on the under. And with the Dons, I'm willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 843, 844 on the card. You've got Washington and Nevada doing battle from the great state of California. Washington, a 5.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 148.5 and set a total here of a 146.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Talked about this game a little bit with our good friend Curtis Rogers, and for Washington, they have been dealing with a few ailments. They were able to get the job done against Southern, but that was a very, very harebrained game, to say the least. And for Washington, they have found themselves a guy that's able to do a nice job in terms of doling out the ball in J.J. Mandequit, who's been able to give you 4.5 assists. Not necessarily give you a ton of scoring, but he's done a nice job being able to just give this team a little bit of something there. Hans Steinbach dealing with a little bit of an injury is rough because he comes over from Germany. In the 4 games that he's actually played, he's been able to give this team 14.5 points. He's able to give you 12 plus boards, so I absolutely love what he's been able to bring to the table for this team, but it appears as though he's going to be out for this game along with Bryson Tucker, which that's not going to make too much of an impact, but certainly having to account for the fact that Steinbach is out is big, but you still have good size. Lathon Somerville, he's someone that was a good rebounder over at Rutgers last season. Frank Kepanog, he's been around the block for a very long time. He's able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game, and now they've got Desmond Claude back as well. He was missing for the first few games games this season. In his debut, he was able to give this team 20 points. He was a teammate of Wesley Yates over at USC a season ago. And on the other end for Nevada, this has been a team that has been very slow and controlled over the last few seasons. Steve Alford has really decided to crank things down a little bit more. Last year, Nevada outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. This year, they're checking in more around about 200th. They should be a pretty sturdy team down low as you bring back Joel Armitrain, who's been able to give you 7 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. And then the backcourt has really seen a tick up. Corey Camper along Tayshaun Comer. They've been able to combine for about 33 points per game, and Comer is still out 3.5 assists per game. It's a bunch that isn't necessarily an amazing three-point shooting team at about 32.5% from the outside, but they really value the ball. They're only turning the ball for 10.5 times per game, not generating a ton of turnovers, but Nevada last year was a good team on the glass in terms of not allowing second and third chances, back in the top 55 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but they've been outside the top 270 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Washington, again, negatively impacted by those injuries, and if you look at the raw numbers for Washington, they appear to be playing very, very fast, 73rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Much of that is due to the fact that the game that they played against Southern went to double overtime. You're going to get more possessions in a game that's 50 minutes long rather than 40 minutes, so I think that things normalize here a little bit. Semi-line at 6.5, one away up to 6 with Washington. It's at a total of 146.5 as well. I'm in on the under, 845, 846 on the card. It is Santa Clara, and they're going to be playing against St. Louis. This is also from lovely Palm Springs, and right now with St. Louis, they're a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. 157.5 is your total, and with St. Louis, I did set them as a underdog of 2 points. I do like Santa Clara here on the money line. I think that's such a big factor is playing in the state of California. And for Santa Clara, this typically has been a team that's been very much built around great guard play, looking to be able to push tempo. They've been looking a little bit more to their forwards this year, and they've slowed themselves down to 273rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, for St. Louis, this is a team that's looking to run a little bit more under that Josh Hurt style. They're up to 20th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They just weren't able to run in season number 1 because they were dealing with a whole bunch of injuries, and they have taken a lot off the plate of Robbie Avila, who last year he was turning the ball over 3.3 times per game because he had to do a little bit of everything. That's back down to 2 turnovers per game, and he's not even the top scorer for this team. That would actually be Amari McCautry, who's been able to give 15 points, 6.5 boards. Love what he's been able to do. Avila's shooting right now 58% from 3. We should see that go downward a little bit, but for as good as the St. Louis offense has been, the defense has been pretty rock solid as well, because this is a top 50 team with regards to rebound percentage. They've done a great job with that regard. Now, St. Louis needs to do a better job at taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 330 in terms of ball security. Their 3-point shooting percentage right now 39.5%, probably not going to last forever. Right now they're in the top 30 in terms of both 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and this without question going to be a very efficient offense. Ishan Sharma has been solid with about 10.5 points. He's helped flow some good clean offense. Again, 52% 3-point shooting. I don't think that that's going to be maintaining, and for Santa Clara, I absolutely love what this team is able to do down low. I think that they are going to be able to pester Mr. Avila, as you've got Elijah Mai back from a season ago, 6'7", very versatile player, 12.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Christian Hammond, he's been supplying the team with 17 points, as he's a guy that comes up from what was the non-D1 ranks a few seasons ago. He was missing for all of last season due to a little bit of a redshirt year, and now you've been able to get a little bit more out of Jake Amsinger with regards to a scoring standpoint, but he's still been able to pull in there 8 rebounds per game. With the Santa Clara team, they become one of the more supreme defenses in all of college basketball. Right now, a top 35 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're doing a great job of grabbing second and third chances. Santa Clara is only shooting about 30.9% from 3, but they've been a top 25 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Top 15 team in terms of block shot rate, with Buki Oboye being able to give you about 10.5 points. He's been able to do a nice job in terms of helping out the backcourt a little bit more, but he's also been able to give you 2.5 blocks per contest, and additionally, you've been able to get good passing out of Amsinger, who I mentioned before as well. 4.3 assists per game. He's actually leading the team with that regard, so I do think that the Santa Clara team has done a great job of being a top 85 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They find a way to get the job done in the state of California. Set my line at 2. I like Santa Clara on the money line. Set my total 152. I'm also in on the under. 847, 848 on the card. It is Minnesota and Stanford doing battle from California. Right now it is Stanford, a 1.5 point favorite. It's on this game between 143.5 to a 144, and I made Stanford the 5.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to take a shot here. Now, Minnesota's been in sort of the West Coast for the last few days. They played a game over at the Sanford Pentagon, so it's not as much travel for them, but still, it is a little bit rough going from the Central Time Zone on over to California. What Minnesota has done a very good job of is being able to win the rebound battle. They've been a top 55 team with regards to rebound percentage. Jalen Crocker-Johnson, who comes on over with the coach Nico Medved from Colorado State, he's been solid. 11.5 points, 10.5 boards per contest. Cade Tyson, who just didn't see a lot of minutes over at North North Carolina last year. 2 years ago at Belmont, 15-plus point per game score. That shot over 40% from three. He's back in full force, 22 points. He's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range, but outside of him, the three-point shooting is just not there. Team that, as a collective, they're shooting about 29% from three-point range, so that has been leaving a lot of something to be desired. And for the Stanford group, you've been able to get quite a bit of production out of unlikely sources because you had to move on from Maximine Raynaud in the offseason, a 20-point per game scorer that was able to pop threes as a 7-footer, and Abuka Okere has been the answer. 23.5 points per game as a freshman, 3 assists, 2 steals. He's been one of the bigger surprises in all of college basketball. And then some of the ancillary pieces that returned from a season ago have been solid. Ryan Archibald has actually been a big disappointment. He hasn't given you too much, but Chisholm Okpara came on over from Harvard a few seasons ago. 6'8", 16 points, 4.5 boards, steal per contest. Benny Gieler has been able to give you 10.5 points per game. He's shooting 46% from three-point range. Jeremy Dent Smith has come in. He's been able to give you some good production as well. And with Kyle Smith, his style is always being able to do the little things well. Right now, this is a top 10 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, so they're doing a rock-solid job there. The Stanford team has not necessarily been a team that's been able to go inferno mode from three-point range or anything like that, but they're just finding good shots. They're taking care of the ball, and with the Stanford team, typically they're a very slow and controlled team. They've been kicking it up a little bit more this year. Stanford, in terms of total possessions per game, right now they're checking in right around about 64th in all of college basketball. I do think that that's going to be going downward a little bit, and we got a Minnesota team under the tutelage of Nico Medved that I don't think is ever going to be up-tempo. His Colorado State teams were typically outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. Right now, that is 309th, but that said, with the Stanford team doing all that they're doing in terms of being up at the boards, not allowing second chances, and they've been a top 35 team in generating turnovers, I do think that they find a way to get the job done. Set my line at 5.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Stanford, and then I did set a total here of a 141.5, so here at the 143.5, I like the under. 849, 850 on the card. It is Miami and BYU doing battle from Orlando. Miami is a 9.5 point underdog. Total on this game to a 164 to a 164.5, and I said BYU is a 7.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to take those points with Miami. For BYU, this has been a really good offense, but under the radar, they've actually been a little bit better with regards to the defense rather than the offense, and it's not like it's a BYU team that is playing overly up-tempo. Right now, 215th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. It's a Miami team that, in year number one under Jai Lucas, they very much have been looking to push a little bit of tempo. They're about 75th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but this BYU team has been able to do a really good job holding up at the point of attack, 73rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Miami, they're mainly built around big men, and they've been number 6 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Malik Renew has been able to give you 9+ rebounds per game. You've been able to get some good production in the backcourt out of Trey Donaldson, who was a big part of that Michigan team from a season ago. Drew Washington was more of a off-the-ball three-point shooter over at New Mexico. He's embraced that role, shooting 47% from 3, 15 points per game for this Miami team. And then you've been able to have Ernest Ude, who was never too much of a scorer, but was a good rebounder over at TCU. Give you 2 blocks, 9 boards per contest. I like what he's able to do. And for BYU, obviously, AJ Demansa, he is the main attraction for this team as he's been leading the way in scoring, one of the top freshmen in all of college basketball. He and Richie Saunders have been able to combine for about 40.5 points per game. Saunders is shooting 40% from 3. Demansa is shooting 38.5% from the outside. And this has been a BYU team that's done a great job in terms of rebounding by committee, a top 75 team with regards to a rebound percentage. Their line teams only shoot about 30.5% from the outside. They themselves have been a little bit more suspect with their three-point shooting than expected, but Robert Wright has been Mr. Wright, being able to give this team 16 points, 5.5 assists, so he's doling out good, clean offense there. It's a squad that has really done a great job in terms of taking care of the ball as well. For BYU, they're a top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis. You've got a Miami squad that has been good at generating turnovers, top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis, but that said, I do think that for this Miami team, they might not be able to get the job done here, but playing out there in the state of Florida, not too far away from Miami, they're going to be able to hold in there, and what I think is going to be a little bit more of a defensive battle. Semi-total 159.5. I like the under and the points here with Miami. 851, 852 on the card. Also from Florida, you've got Dayton and Georgetown doing battle. Georgetown is a 1.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 147.5 to 148.5, and with Georgetown, I did set them as a favorite of 2 points, so going to be willing to lay the 1.5. Dayton coming off of a really nice win against Marquette, and then in their next game, got a little bit more of a scare. It's been a Dayton team that's been a little bit all over the place this season, so certainly something that you do want to note, but that said, this is a Dayton squad that I feel like is just built a little bit better than they were a season ago. Last year, you had a lot of guys like Apache Alexander and Zedke who had big names, but they didn't really buy into a team system. Now you've got Tashawn Montgomery giving you 15 points per game after he dealt with injury injuries over at Georgia a season ago. Javon Bennett has been able to give you 16.5 points per contest. Jordan Gercock, he does not necessarily give you a ton of scoring. He was a really good scorer over at Merrimack a few seasons ago, but he's just a little bit of a this and that guy. He's right now giving you 4 assists, a steal. He's doing the little things that the team needs. Dayton has taken a big step back with their three-point shooting. They're shooting only about 30% from 3, but they stepped up in terms of generating turnovers. A top 45 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, while Georgetown has been very efficient with the ball. Top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and reason to think that there's positivity for this Georgetown offense. They're shooting only 26.9% from 3-point. Malik Mack and KJ Lewis have been good from 3. Mack, he's been able to give you 15 points as that main facilitator with 4 assists per contest, shooting 38% from 3. Lewis comes over from Arizona, and he has been great. 17 points, 3 steals, 35.5% 3-point shooter, but outside that, not a ton from the outside. Deshaun Harris-Smith was a little bit of a bust as a highly touted recruit over at Maryland. He hasn't necessarily given this team a ton, but you do have some rough and tumble down low. Vincent Ayuchuku, true 7-footer, just dealt with that heart arrhythmia situation over at USC many years ago. He's been able to get back to being able to give you multiple blocks per contest. Caleb Williams, good versatility, 11.5 points, 5 boards. I like what he's bringing to the table. And with regards to this Georgetown team, they just continue to do a very rock-solid job in terms of their low post play, as they've been a top 35 team in their opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, top 15 team with regards to block shot percentage, and I think that that's going to be a little bit too much for Dayton to overcome, despite having the 7-footer in Amari Latang, who's been able to do a good job for them. Did set a total of a 148. It is a Dayton squad that traditionally is relatively efficient with regards to their offense, but they're a little bit more slow and controlled. Dayton has been speeding things up just a skoge a bit this season. Dayton, in terms of total possessions per game, checking in right around about 192nd. Ed Cooley's teams are typically middle of the road. They're about 177th this year, so with this total at 147.5, I like the over, and I do like Georgetown laying a 1.5, 853, 854 on the card. It is Wisconsin against Providence. This is from San Diego, and with Wisconsin 6 to 6.5 point favorites, 167 to 167.5 is the total, and I'm going to be willing to take a shot here on Providence. I did set them as a underdog of 5 points for Wisconsin. This is a team that ranks 20th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Much of that came at home, though. They got completely bludgeoned in that game against BYU last week, where they only scored 70 points. Now, it's still a team that's doing the little things well. They're a top 50 team in terms of free throw shooting percentage, fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but that said, this is also a Wisconsin team that is just not necessarily one that's going to get up in your grill. They've been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers. Top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and then the duo of Nick Boyd and John Blackwell in the backcourt has been great. A combined 37.5 points per game. You don't necessarily have that one main facilitator. Nobody's giving you more than 2.4 assists per game, but they're just doing it by committee. You've got Blackwell, who's right now shooting 45% from 3, and this has been a Wisconsin team that's been very good at pulling in their offensive rebounds, headlined by Nolan Winter. It has been Winter for teams going up against them, 14 points, 7 boards per contest, and 3.5 of those rebounds are on the offensive glass. But for Providence, reason to believe that they're getting back to a little bit more of a defensive approach. Right now, they're a top 25 team in terms of total possessions per game, well outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but against New Hampshire, along with Penn State, held both of those teams at 66 points or fewer, and you have to think that they're going to be utilizing their big man in Oswin, can't pronounce the last name, to really clog things up down low. He was only giving you 7.5 points per game, but 8.5 rebounds and 4 blocks per contest. And then in the backcourt, you've got 2 really nice go-to scorers in Jalen Sellers along Jason Edwards. These 2 guys are combined for over 35 points per game, leaving something to be desired from the outside. Both of these guys shooting less than 30% from 3, and that's been a big issue for Providence. They're only shooting 30.5% from 3, but they've been a top 35 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. So Ryan Mella down low has been able to give you 10 points, 7 boards. He's been rock solid. Corey Floyd, he's actually shooting 46% from 3, but he's the guy that's able to get the ball down low. 11 points, 2.5 assists, good versatility there. Providence has done a nice job taking care of the ball themselves, only about 10.5 turnovers per game, despite playing at a little bit more of a harebrained tempo. I think that Providence is going to be able to hold in there with their interior, with Oswin doing a nice job being able to block some shots. So I did set a line here of 5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Providence, and I think that Providence slows down from what has been a very, very harebrained and just different pace for them. Semi-total 157 as Wisconsin, still about 190th in terms of total possessions per game. So I'm going to be in on the under as well. And then we wrap things up with 855, 856 on the card. It is TCU taking on Florida. This is also from the great state of California. Florida is a 13.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 151.5. And with this total, I did set mine out of 154. I do like the over for Florida. They've been struggling a lot with their 3-point shooting, bringing in Xavion Lee and Boogie Flan. I mean, these are 2 very talented pieces, but they're still working on their chemistry. But Florida's still playing very, very fast, 26th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You got a TCU unit that's been a little bit more mid-tempo this year. They're about 139th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and it is a TCU team that is taking quite a bit of a step back in terms of their defense. Still a top 40 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. basis, but we saw what happened in that game against New Orleans to begin the season. They are outside the top 150 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and for TCU, it's just a little bit of a work in progress team. You've got David Punchdown, though, who has been able to give you a little bit of punch, 10.5 points, 6 boards per contest, and then you have to like the fact that you bring in Jaden Pierre from Providence, double-figure score for them last year. He's been able to supply 12 points, shooting 38% from three-point range, but it is a TCU team getting a little bit sloppy with the ball, about 12.5 turnovers per game, and even though this is a TCU team that has quite a bit of size down low, they're just no match for a Florida team that last year was a top 15 team in terms of rebound percentage. You're right back there this season as you bring back Ruben Chinyelu, Alex Condon, and Micah Handlogden from a season ago, and all these guys are doing a great job down low. Handlogden, 8.8 rebounds per game, not too much of a score, but he does a great job there. Alex Condon, 9 boards, 17 points, has been cold from 3, but he does a great job in terms of giving you second and third chances. Ruben Chinyelu, 11.5 rebounds per game, not a guy that's going to light you up from 3, but does a great job in his home down low. And then for Xavier Lee, he has been versatile. He's been able to give the team 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists. Problem is, he's just been cold with his three-point shooting at 15% from three-point, and reason to believe that there's going to be positivity with a team that's shooting 25.7% from 3. Are they going to be back to the Walter Clayton days? No, but at the same time, we should see this go northward. Boogie flying 11 points per game on 20% three-point shooting, and it is a team that has been turning the ball over a little bit more than what you'd like, outside the top 250 in terms of taking care of the ball, but even though their three-point shooting has been bad, they've been holding opponents to shoot 25% from 3. Again, that's a number that should be going northward a little bit, but I do think that Florida's going to be looking to crank up the tempo. I do think that they do a pretty rock-solid job down low. Set my line at 12. I think both of these teams are doing for positivity, and I do think that Jamie Dixon's defense-oriented team does just enough to be able to hold in there. Did set my line at 12, so we'll take those points, and I'm going to be in on the over, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Happy Thanksgiving to you all, and a big thanks to Curtis Rogers, who joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, give you guys picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
Everybody knows Shaq, but off camera, he's just a regular guy.
People never believe me when I say I'm just like them. I take out the trash, do dishes, and I struggle with moderate obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA. And a lot of adults with obesity also struggle with moderate to severe OSA. You know those scary breathing interruptions during sleep, the loud snoring, choking, and daytime fatigue? I knew I had to talk to my doctor. Don't sleep on the symptoms. Learn more at don'tsleeponosa.com.
This information is provided by Lilly, a medicine company.
If your small business is booming and ready to expand, you might say something like,
"It's happening!"
Booyah!
Crushed it. But if you need someone who can actually help protect your growing business, just say,
"Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there."
And just like that, your State Farm agent can help you get the coverage you need for your new space. For your small business insurance needs, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Did you know 39% of teen drivers admit to texting while driving? Even scarier, those who text are more likely to speed and run red lights. Shockingly, 94% know it's dangerous but do it anyway. As a parent, you can't always be in the car, but you can stay connected to their safety with Greenlight Infinity's driving reports. Monitor their driving habits, see if they're using their phone, speeding, and more. These reports provide real data for meaningful conversations about safety. Plus, with weekly updates, you can track their progress over time. Help keep your teens safe. Sign up for Greenlight Infinity at greenlight.com/podcast.